I'm gonna just use this here. Yeah, there we go. Government recently claimed that I'm a disease that needs a cure. You and me both, brother. I'm assuming this means, like, the government has announced its, like, war on autism. Yeah, bro, the boss. I was talking about that last stream. In fact, I think there's so much good material from last stream that basically every topic that I talked about, I think is going to get turned into a segment. And one of them was indeed RFK Jr. and the Department of Health and Human Services' new crusade against autism and autists, particularly. Where the contention is that autism and the people who have it are like some fucking disease upon society, and how, like, we're not potty trained, I guess. Very weird of him to bring up that, like, autists are not potty trained as, like, an invective or something. I feel like he's telling on himself a little bit for something. I don't know exactly what it is. Maybe he wasn't potty trained until he was, like, 7 years old or something. I don't know. But yeah, no, like, obviously all the shit that he's saying is false and, like, just made up. It's part of the eugenicist narrative. In order to justify purging the degenerates, like, you know, what Nazis would say are, like, dysgenic people, in order to justify killing, I guess, what RFK Jr. would call the chronically sick, you have to convince people first. You have to manufacture the consent that they need to be killed, which means that, like, sometimes it's not enough just to say that they're degenerates. You have to make some kind of argument that they are a drag on society. And autistic people, by all, like, metrics, contribute to society in a lot of different ways, right? Like, I've explained before that so many fucking people have autism that it's, like, kind of a... It's a, like, now it's a socially acceptable thing to just kind of throw around jokes about, because it's like, oh, haha, you know, everybody has a touch of autism. It's kind of true. The way that we measure neurological spectrums are kind of it's kind of arbitrary, and it's subject to a number of things, from genetic predispositions at birth to differing material circumstances that can affect people's social development, right? So, like, there are a number of things that can cause somebody to have or not have autism at any given moment. Some of them may be subject to change, some of them may not be, right? And so functionally what that means is that we have a society full of autists who are all doing great autistic things, smiley face. And you know, like, it's quite possible that the sort of mythical neurotypical person is more rare than somebody who is neurodiverse, like, insofar as having autism or ADHD, right? That's like the reality of it, but you have to manufacture the case that that's, like, not what's happening in order to justify killing autistic people. And more than likely, they would go after anybody who, like, cares about human rights or is, like, visibly autistic in the sense that, like, maybe they have some signs of being what they would call, like, what was it? Low functioning, where like they genuinely have a lot of trouble with very basic social stuff, you know? What I'm trying to say here is that we are legion, us the autists, the great American autists, are legion, and there's no way for RFK Jr. to get us all, right? But he can manufacture enough consent, potentially, to start purging a few of us, and we basically have to stand together as one giant autistic rainbow of voices and say, fuck you, idiot, let us enjoy our trains in peace. You know? Because, like, what does he think? Like, I know that he knows he's lying, right? But what does he think that people, like, picture autistic people as doing, right? The number one stereotype that I hear is that they really like trains. And that's true. You know what people who are autistic grow up to be? Fucking engineers, city planners, social scientists, economists, sociologists, like all the fucking different kinds of people that have lifelong passions and make society tick day in and day out are pretty likely to be autistic. Again, just because so many people fall under certain conditions that would be recognizable as autism. You know? But if he can, if RFK Jr. can kind of, like, weave some kind of narrative, as half-baked as it might be, that you know, autists, like people who have autism are like just hungry mouths that don't contribute to society, then like he can be like, all right, great, now let's begin our crusade against chronic sickness, by which I mean our crusade against the chronically sick, by which I mean I want to kill autistic people. You know? Like, it's just Nazi eugenicism. There was, like, I gotta be honest, the mask, were it not for the anti-vax portion of what he was saying, the mask for RFK Jr.'s aspirations was actually better laid than most. You know, when he talked about chronic disease, there are a lot of chronic illnesses that pose real problems in this country, precisely because of a lot of the failings of the American healthcare system. But I also knew, like everybody knew from the outset, that RFK Jr. was a massive anti-vaxxer and like fucking hated autistic people. Like, that's the crux of being anti-vax. Like, oh, it causes autism or something. You know. So there were some critical cracks in that mask, but, you know. Regardless, all of that is a fancy way, driven from both data and personal experience, to say that this is some Nazi shit, and, like, RFK Jr. is a Nazi, wants to kill, you know, the undesirables, except instead of just the Jews, he's talking about, you know, the parasites, in parentheses, autistic people who, like, I don't know, fucking do everything. You know? Like, imagine saying that, like, imagine saying that, you know how there are certain types of people where, or there are, like, different types of imagination where, to varying degrees, people can or can't see an object in their head, right? Like, if I told you to imagine an apple, there's, like, different stages of, like, you understand the concept of the apple, but you can't actually picture it, or you have a very vivid image in your brain of an apple and what that looks like, right? That people exist on a sort of spectrum like that. Imagine if I said nobody who can't picture an apple in their head holds a job or can use the toilet unassisted. You would be like, dog, what the fuck? You belong in a straitjacket. I see a red apple? Well, there you go. And that means that you are easily capable to imagine an image visually, right? Rather than just conceptually. You know, that's like one of the neurological spectrums that we know about that people fit somewhere along, right? So imagine if I got up there, instead of autism, was like, yeah, if you can't picture an apple when I tell you to picture an apple, like if you can't physically imagine an image like that, that means that you've never held a job, you can't use the toilet unassisted, you're a parasite on society, you are the chronically sick and you are killing society, and we need to, like, take care of you or something. Pepe emoji. Or like, whatever the fuck, right? Because that's about, like, how insane it is to say, like, yeah, autistic people are all parasites, you know? If autistic people didn't exist, who would ever post anything interesting or funny on the internet? Like, come on. People say being a leftist helps you process hypotheticals. Yeah, if you there is a strong correlative relationship, in some way it might even be causative, between being further left, having political imagination, being able to think rationally, and being able to deal with hypotheticals as a concept. Because being conservative relies on irrational, emotional, and disgust-driven thinking. Literally, if you are a conservative, it means you are not using your faculties of reason when you are thinking about, well, anything, really. You know, if you are a reactionary, if you hold conservative views, it means you're dumber. I know that sounds, like, mean as fuck, but there is genuinely data to measure that, like, people who are left-leaning are more introspective and like, rational thinking, and capable of critical thought. And that's what makes people left-leaning versus right-leaning, you know? Because right-leaning politics is like driven by, like I said, emotion, disgust, and hatred. It's kind of like instead of being conservative, being a predictor of you thinking a certain way, it's more like thinking a certain way, or in this case, not thinking a certain way, is a predictor of you being more conservative. Does that make sense? I have to use this here, I think. Yeah, whatever. I was falling way too far behind. I didn't want to get, you know, last. Yeah, it's reactionary. Because you are having a very guttural and visceral reaction, and you are not thinking about your political positions. And of course, that's what RFK Jr. is counting on and utilizing in saying that, like, oh, no autistic person's ever held a job or anything like that. You know, because obviously that's not borne out in any sort of data. If you think rationally, you're like, now hold on a minute. That can't be true. And the people who are likely to eat up that sort of rhetoric are people who would already have a established base of, like, disgust and disdain for autistic people, or at least a caricature of an autistic person that they have in their mind. Frequently, you know, exposure to a certain type of people that's, like, frequently maligned in reactionary political narratives tends to eat away at that reactionary political narrative. It's just a fact of the world. You know? That's why cities are progressive, because when you live around other different, like, diverse groups of people, you learn that, oh yeah, they're just people. They just like me, for real. You know? Whereas if you're, like, in the countryside, RFK Jr. can go up there and be like, the Jew, I mean the autist, has devil horns and a forked tongue and a tail and will literally strangle you in front of your children, but also can't hold a job. And because you're in the countryside and everybody in your town is white, straight, and neurotypical, allegedly, you'll just believe that because you've never met an autistic person. How do you know if he's wrong or not? You think Canada would accept in the future if I ran there? Just thinking about my options. Yeah, I'm sure it, like, if you wanted to, if like, moving to Canada would be a viable, like, plan of escape for people who are thinking about exit options from the United States. That's a viable option for sure. You know, in fact, you'd probably be more likely, like, as an American, they would probably be more willing to take you than most other groups of people for a couple reasons. Number one, because, like, racism. And, you know, we all know that anti-immigration sentiment is usually, like, more tooled against brown people than white people. But also because, just from a logistical perspective, Canada is a largely English-speaking country, right? And you, as an English-speaking adult from America, would be actually incredibly easy to integrate into Canada compared to somebody from another country that didn't predominantly speak English, or even compared to raising a kid, you know, in Canada. So it's a valid option. $5.5 million American adults are on the autism scale, and I would be willing to bet that that is a significant undercount, you know? For a number of reasons. Again, like I mentioned, it's kind of hard to quantify certain things about who is or isn't on the autism spectrum because of, like, how many factors could determine whether somebody is or isn't autistic, whether that is subject to change or not, things like that. Thanks for watching, and support the channel if you would be so kind.